Marcus Licinius Crassus was not born to poverty, but his true rise began during Sulla's brutal dictatorship. He enriched himself amid the chaos, seizing the properties of the proscribed and turning Rome's misery into his own fortune. At his peak, Crassus owned vast swaths of land, silver mines, and even a private fire brigade that he used to coerce property sales. He wasn't just wealthy, he was the richest man in Rome. But in a republic where glory mattered more than gold, Crassus craved something money could not buy: military fame. He had crushed Spartacus's slave revolt in 71 BC, but Pompey, arriving late to defeat the remnants, claimed disproportionate glory through political maneuvering, fueling Crassus's resentment. Caesar, though young and charismatic, was winning hearts and headlines in Gaul. Crassus, despite his wealth and political clout, remained in their shadows. He desired for respect and legacy burned deeper within each passing year. In 60 BC, he joined with Pompey and Caesar to form what would become known as the First Triumvirate. Their alliance was unofficial and extra-legal, a private pact among three of Rome's most powerful men. Caesar brought ambition, rhetorical brilliance, and rising military success. Pompey brought unmatched prestige as a general and the loyalty of veterans. Crassus brought money, vast sums of it, and influence over Rome's financial elite, known as the equites. Each man had something the others needed. The Senate, dominated by conservative optimates, had alienated all three. They had refused to ratify Pompey's eastern settlements, undermined Caesar's early political ambitions, and resented Crassus's financial power. United, the triumvirate bypassed the Senate through direct appeals to the people and backroom deals. Caesar was elected consul in 59 BC, thanks in part to Crassus's financing and Pompey's muscle. In turn, he passed land reform laws that favored Pompey's veterans and protected Crassus's tax farming allies in Asia. Yet the alliance was always fragile. Caesar, though initially the junior partner, was proving himself on the battlefield in Gaul, earning both popular acclaim and hardened legions. Pompey, increasingly uneasy about Caesar's rise, began drifting towards the Senate's orbit. Crassus, meanwhile, feared being outpaced by both. He needed a military triumph of his own to remain relevant, and so his gaze turned eastward to Parthia. The Parthian Empire, stretching across modern-day Iran and Iraq, was Rome's only true rival in the east. Wealthy, exotic, and largely untouched by Roman conquest, it tempted Crassus with the promise of renown. He saw Parthia as a source of vast tribute and the path to military glory, inspired by Rome's earlier eastern conquests. In 55 BC, Crassus was granted a provincial command over Syria, a strategic base bordering Parthian lands. The decision was not without controversy. Unlike Pompey's wars or Caesar's campaigns, Crassus's command lacked any real justification. There was no Parthian aggression, no Senate decree. It was a war of opportunity, one fueled by personal ambition rather than national security. The Senate grumbled, but the triumvirs still had enough clout to silence most opposition. Only a few voices, like that of Cicero, dared to criticize Crassus openly. The augurs cited dire omens, including Crassus's mishandling of a sacrifice offering during a ceremony which many Romans saw as a portent of doom. Crassus ignored them. He saw in Parthia a chance to claim his own triumph, to stand on equal footing with the legends of Rome. Crassus arrived in Syria and began preparing for his invasion. Confident in the might of his legions and eager for a decisive victory, Crassus dismissed the need for local knowledge or alliances, but instead of securing local support or studying Parthian terrain, he focused on collecting funds and raising legions. He ignored offers of aid from local client kings like Artavasdes of Armenia, who proposed 10,000 cavalry and a safer mountainous route to outmaneuver the Parthians. Crassus, stubborn and overconfident, rejected the advice. He would march straight through the desert. His decision puzzled even his own officers. Many believed that the route through Armenia would not only provide natural protection, but an opportunity to catch the Parthians off guard. Crassus dismissed these concerns, preferring speed and directness. In 53 BC, Crassus crossed the Euphrates with around 40,000 men, a mix of Roman legionaries and cavalry. The Parthians, a nomadic warrior culture skilled in mountain warfare, were led by Serena, a young noble whose tactical genius rivaled Rome's best. Ironically, Serena's brilliance led to his execution by the Parthian king, wary of his rising fame. They wielded a smaller force, but a crucial advantage: highly mobile horse archers and heavy armored cataphracts. As the Romans trudged through the open plains, they were being lured into a trap. The flat, arid plains of Carrhae offered no cover for the Romans, perfectly suiting Serena's mobile cavalry. Near the town of Carrhae, in the arid plains of Mesopotamia, the Parthians struck. Serena deployed his cavalry with terrifying efficiency. Waves of horse archers encircled Roman formations, unleashing a relentless hail of arrows. The heat, the open terrain, the lack of water broke the Roman lines. Crassus formed his men into tight squares, a standard defense against cavalry. But the Parthians never charged directly. They circled, fired, withdrew, and returned. Parthian archers used composite bows that could pierce Roman armor when the Romans tried to break ranks and charge. The Parthians' cataphracts countered with devastating impact. Crassus's son, Publius, led the cavalry detachment to flank the enemy, but was drawn away and surrounded. Publius died in battle, and his head was paraded on a spear before the Roman lines. The psychological blow was immense. Crassus, now paralyzed by grief and indecision, failed to act. The Romans were left exposed, sunburned, and demoralized. Their supply line had been overextended. Water ran low. Morale collapsed. The famed discipline of the legions was crumbling, not because of fear alone, but because of futility. No matter how they moved, the Parthians adapted faster. After a day of brutal fighting, Crassus's army was decimated. Thousands lay dead or captured. The survivors tried to retreat, but harassed endlessly by Parthian scouts. Crassus, seeking to negotiate a way out, agreed to meet with Serena under a truce. Unfortunately, it was a trap. Accounts differ, but most agree that Crassus was seized during the parley and killed either immediately or shortly afterwards. A Roman legend claimed that molten gold was poured down his throat to mock his greed. A story that was likely invented by writers like Cassius Dio to underscore his downfall. Out of roughly 40,000 Roman troops, some 20,000 were killed and 10,000 taken prisoner. The loss of legendary eagles, Rome's sacred standards, was an unparalleled disgrace. The Parthians would display them for decades as symbols of Roman weakness. Many captured Roman soldiers were sent east by the Parthians to garrison towns in Central Asia, though some scholars speculate with little evidence that they settled there permanently. Whether fact or legend, the scale of disaster remained etched into Roman memory. The news of Crassus's death and the annihilation at Carrhae shocked Rome. The city reeled, and public mourning overshadowed by Senate debates over who would fill the power vacuum left by Crassus, and fear of Parthian reprisals gripped the city. Never before had a Roman army suffered such defeat against a foreign power in the east. Crassus had waged an unsanctioned war and paid the ultimate price. The first triumvirate, already strained, collapsed without him. Pompey aligned more closely with the Senate. Caesar, far away in Gaul, grew stronger as the sole remaining force of the triumvirs. Within a few years, Rome plunged into civil war. The Parthian victory emboldened Eastern resistance. It took decades before Augustus, through diplomacy, was able to recover the lost standards. Crassus's failure lingered like a wound on Rome's honor. His ambition had not only destroyed his army, but helped unravel the fragile political order of Rome itself. Pompey and Caesar were now on a collision course. With Crassus gone, there was no one left to mediate between their competing ambitions. The Republic, already weakened, now teetered on the edge of collapse. Crassus's failure was not just a military blunder, it was a geopolitical earthquake. Crassus is often remembered as the least charismatic of the triumvirs. He lacked Caesar's brilliance and Pompey's heroics, but his death was no minor footnote. It was a turning point. His campaign against Parthia exposed the dangers of private wars waged for personal glory. Carrhae would enter Roman memory as one of the darkest military defeats. For Rome, it was a lesson in the limits of imperial ambition. For future generals, it was a warning: do not underestimate the East. The Parthians had shown that legions alone were not invincible. Ironically, Crassus, the man who sought immortality through conquest, achieved it through failure. His failure helped accelerate the fall of the Republic. His greed, pride, and poor judgment ended not only his life, but Rome's last illusion of unity. Even in death, Crassus was not forgotten. His legacy lived on in political cautionary tales, historical writings, and the minds of future emperors. He showed Rome what not to do, and in doing so, influenced what came next.